I'm Michon Boston.
And I'm Tequina Boston. Invite historical drama fans you know to subscribe to Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters wherever they enjoy their favorite podcast. Subscribers receive notifications about new episodes and bonus content.
Sign up for our newsletter on our webpage at michonbostongroup.com/Boston Sisters or on our Instagram bio link at Historical Drama Sisters and receive news and announcements about upcoming podcasts and historical drama activities. Enjoy the podcast, and thank you for listening. Welcome to Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters, where we talk about historical films and dramatic series as windows to the past and mirrors of the present. I'm Michon Boston.
And I'm Tequina Boston. Michon and I have wanted to produce a podcast around Call the Midwife for Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters from the time we launched this podcast 4 years ago in 2021. From its premiere in 2012 on BBC One and PBS public media stations in the United States, Call the Midwife, about midwife nurses serving residents in London's East End, has engrossed millions of fans for 14 seasons.
Call the Midwife is based on the trilogy of memoirs by Jennifer Worth about her experiences as a midwife nurse during the 1950s. While a staff nurse in Whitechapel, East London, Worth lived with an Anglican community of nuns at the Sisters of St. John the Divine, a nursing sisterhood that worked with poor people and delivered babies in the community. Created, written, and executive produced by Heidi Thomas, the series presents a moving and intimate story that captures the history of British midwifery, childbirth, nursing, maternal health, reproductive health, and parenthood in the East End's Poplar community after World War II. Call the Midwife intertwines the work of midwifery with the midwives' personal lives and the Poplar community's struggles through chronic illness, addiction, domestic violence, xenophobia and racism, poverty, displacement, death, and grief. But it's Call the Midwife's focus on humanity, empathy, community, and the lives of all the characters in the story that brings the kind of solace that keeps audiences coming back for over a decade.
Our guest for this podcast is Jenny Agutter, who portrays Sister Julienne, the sister in charge at Nonnatus House, the fictional name for the community of nuns and midwives in Call the Midwife. Jenny has portrayed Sister Julienne since Call the Midwife's first season. Sister Julienne returns in season 14, marking a new decade in Poplar. It's 1970. Nonnatus House continues to tackle social challenges like poor housing, poverty, and various health issues. Sister Julienne navigates the challenges and the uncertainties of change within and around Nonnatus House with unwavering faith, support, and dedication to the East End community that she and the midwife nurses and nuns serve.
We talked with Jenny Agutter about her behind-the-scenes experiences portraying Sister Julienne in Call the Midwife over the past 14 seasons. Please note there are some spoilers in our conversation in case you want to come back to this podcast after you watch Call the Midwife. Welcome, Jenny, to Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's lovely to meet you.
This is such an honor because this is one of our favorite series. We've been watching it. Of course, there are tears every time we watch another season of Call the Midwife. It's such a wonderful show. But Call the Midwife is also kind of an anomaly in the media dominated by anti-heroes, action-adventure, and reality TV. What do you think makes Call the Midwife popular with audiences?
I think it's because it's outside all those, what one's expecting on television at the moment, the big adventures, the cop stories, the investigations, the crime, the blood, all the rest of it. So it deals with people, it deals with humanity, it deals with social issues, it deals with some really major problems. over the years, and the changing. I mean, the lovely thing about doing it over this long period of time is seeing the changes that happen economically, socially, in medicine, in everything, for women, all of these things. And I think that's actually what people enjoy. And it's because Heidi Thomas's stories are so well written. I mean, they're a joy to take part in, because she'll take her subject matter, she'll take the year, she'll look at the things that she wants to investigate, and then she weaves her plots around them in a way that's not what you expect at all, which is, I think, good storytelling and lovely to play in, because you read it and you're surprised by it, but you find out about the people and how they deal with things. And it's never soft. It doesn't have easy answers to things. It doesn't have easy endings. But in it, there are a group of people in Poplar, and the centre of which is Nonnatus House and the community and the midwives that support one another. And I think that in these times today is really important.
Let's talk about season 14. That's where we are now. Can't believe 14 years have gone by. What are some of the overarching themes and values driving the stories this season? We're now in the 1970s.
Exactly. We've moved from 1969 into 1970. And I think the surprise is, in a way, how dark a lot of the stories are. They deal very much with the social problems, the extraordinary difficulties that people face economically, people being evicted from houses, the strikes. I think it seems particularly dark because the 60s, in the 50s, one was just combating it's the end of the war. The 60s were so full of hope, so full of, what the future might bring. So much development in music, we went into space. There were so many things that happened that the 70s, not that they were a disappointment, but that suddenly life became real again, and actually issues don't go away. So, the poverty is extreme. There's also divisions between classes, I think, even more so, where I think for Sister Julienne, she's always known how communities help one another. And suddenly there is a distance between groups, economic groups. One sees in one of the series a well-to-do family turning away from their responsibility to a child who is extremely ill and they feel they can't cope with. And it's a really sad story. And actually, someone I know told me of that period of time and going through exactly that. Those sorts of things, the people living in dire circumstances, the housing can never keep up with the need. We see that today. I mean, there's things that change so rapidly. We're looking at a world right now, which is, I think, terrifying, frankly. I mean, we're on the edge of all sorts of problems. And it can change just like that. And yet we have the capabilities to turn our world around in a good way.
We're going to drop a couple spoiler alerts because, Jenny, I just want to say you were wonderful as Sister Julienne in that situation with Nurse Joyce being brought before the council when she was being accused of negligence by a mother who refused her treatment and care because she was Black.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, I don't know if you were aware of it, but you were so realistic in terms of definitely understanding that you have a great midwife and absolutely she would not neglect her patient, but at the same time not understanding her personal struggle with what was going on with this situation.
Yes, she's Julienne is so single-minded, and all she sees are these wonderful nurses that come across. We've had, another nurse from the Caribbean, and then this is one of her top nurses. I mean, just absolutely wonderful. And she actually does not understand the issues. I mean, it's rather extraordinary to think of somebody actually saying to the character, look, tell me what went wrong, and for her to have to spell out that she has been denied the possibility to care for a woman because she will not have her touch her. And we've seen a character, it's beautifully played, Bernie Midgley by Eliza Collins, wonderfully played because she's this outgoing, wonderful woman who's friends with everybody and it's all except then you suddenly see this other side of her, which is just completely racist and completely unaccepting. And I have to say, I played a scene, my first scene with her before we did the scene in court was a scene where, and I hadn't done the rehearsal. I went in and we just went through the scene and she was terrified where she just says, I'm sorry, this woman doesn't know what she was doing. I'm going to take her to court. You're ridiculous. And it was like, whoa, where does this come from? But of course, Sister Julienne, all she wants to do is be able to support. And what is frightening is how badly wrong this can go. Obviously she has got a really good, clear report. She's got Dr. Turner behind. She's got Sister Julienne behind. But you don't know how the courts are going to see this and how they're going to understand these things. So, we won't give away what happens, but it's a worrying moment. And extraordinary that it happens. It's difficult to play something like that. And then you think, is that still going on to a certain extent today? And yes, I guess it does go on.
Well, it was a powerful moment for you and for Renee Bailey.
Renee, yes. And Renee is lovely in it, pleading her case and just talking about what happened and seeing this line of people just looking and nodding and accepting and then understanding what she has to say.
Jenny, we talked about the fact that Call the Midwife has basically gone through 2 decades. And you talked a little bit about how Heidi comes up with the stories and how she integrates history. And from what you were saying about an earlier episode piece, there's a lot of medical knowledge that goes into creating the show. To what extent do you have interaction with historical consultants and medical advisors on the program in order to make sure that, as Sister Julienne, you understand what's going on in the scene and in terms of the period you're in? Because it's very interesting for me watching some of the medical devices that are used in those birthing situations that I know, we've come a long way from that.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different things in that, which is the very first script we had way back 14 years ago, which talks about enemas and these glass enemas. And I thought, I had to look back and think, is this 1958 or is this the Victorian era? I mean, it just seemed like it belonged in a completely different time. And how things have moved on with pain control, with women, what's accepted. And we move on yet again to women not spending so much time in hospital. In these episodes, they suddenly say, well, no, that doesn't make sense. They need to get up and on their feet and on with it, which is actually what kicks off the Midgley story, Bernie Midgley, because she's being told to get up, get on, you've got to get, and the problems develop. But yes, we don't really see the scripts generally till right before we film because there are so many changes that can happen. So first of all, that those have been fine-combed, that someone's been going through that very carefully for the medical details. Then there's looking up how to pronounce both medications and conditions. My son is a GP, so he gets calls from me saying, how do you actually say this? What is this? And can you explain? So he explains some things. But there are people for us to go to. And then with the births themselves, we always have a midwife present throughout the whole thing. We've had the same midwife for a great many years, and then somebody else is with us now. Our first lovely midwife was actually worked with Jennifer Worth and was one of the people that actually pushed these stories to come forward. And that's really important to us because everything from handling a child through handling the mother, the emotional side, the physical side, the doing of it, the cutting of the umbilical cord, all of those things one needs to go over again and again with a midwife there and present. So to make that absolutely correct. I mean, there are always going to be there's going to be dramatic license where you make something happen faster or something is just a little bit different than would happen naturally, but because it's drama and you have to accept that it's drama. But as much as possible, we really try to make things real. I mean, I know that going back in time, the episode where we've had a breech birth, they've actually used that with midwives to teach them about a breech birth. Seeing the episode, seeing the baby drop, seeing how all of that worked. And I've been in talks with midwives, where you go and they ask questions about it, and it's lovely to know that they're actually enjoying what we do, and feel that what we do is correct. I do remember there's one little note, which was that the main problem they have is their knees, the midwives, because we spend a lot of time on your knees. So yeah, and I remember that kneeling on floors and kneeling here, kneeling there, and yes, hurting the knees. But yes, there's all sorts of. There's another thing, another medical story in terms of bringing things sometimes to Heidi, because cystic fibrosis is in my family. I carry the gene, and I have a niece and a great nephew both have cystic fibrosis because the two genes that make cystic fibrosis are present in those families. Because of that, and knowing that in 1962, I think it was, they were able to identify the gene, I said to Heidi, this is a really interesting moment, medically, that they were able to identify it and they were able to know about it. And I said, because in those times, they were just seeing what they called children failing or babies failing, and they didn't know why they were failing. But there was another element to it, which was that there is a sweat that is very salty on a child with CF. So Sister Monica Joan would have a reference to that historically. But Dr. Turner would be able to know in his new notes that you could actually examine and find cystic fibrosis. So she wrote a most wonderful story. And one of there's always about 3 or 4 stories that weave through each episode. But this story is about a family with a child who seemed to be failing. And Dr. Turner picked up on some of the symptoms and then tested the child, and the child had cystic fibrosis, which was wonderful because so few people actually know very much about cystic fibrosis. So apparently after that episode, everybody was going online to look at it. So it's, medical things like that actually are wonderful because they reveal how much those changes affect us.
That's interesting. I think I remember years ago a PSA here in the United States, they said, kiss your baby to check for cystic fibrosis if they're salty.
Because if you get that taste of salt on, exactly right.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in what you had to say because obviously the show has an impact beyond its dramatic, touching the heart, etc. And I know that in the States, we're seeing a return to, they're calling them birth doulas now, but they're basically midwives. I'm wondering, has that happened in the UK as well?
There's been a lot of people signed up. The difficulty in the UK are the finances and seeing the many people who might want to become midwives through their courses and on to work, where they can go. If it's in the NHS, it just is very difficult right now because of the lack of finances. But yes, there have been people wanting to sign on and wanting to take up because I think of seeing that in the show. I mean, it's an amazing job that women do, really amazing. But your midwives are mainly going into the hospitals, aren't they? They won't go to the homes because that's still illegal in a lot of states.
Yeah. They go to homes, but you have a call into the hospital,
right?
In case there are complications,
right? But I think there are some states that they still don't allow you to have the baby at home.
Could be. We'll have to do a fact check.
Do a little research.
Fact check because I think that what they do is they cross the border and book into a hotel, have the midwife go there. I mean, I would have been slightly worried by it myself because I was 38 when I gave birth, and I was concerned about the problems. But and I did actually give birth on Christmas Day, which was not easy. I ended up with about 5 different midwives coming through, and I was very, very aware though how much help you get from that person. And the last midwife I had, I sort of wished she'd been at the beginning, because she was just so absolutely in tune with what was going on that she was able to really sort of help that all happen. It's a wonderful, it's amazing. I mean, it is, and a very emotional job too. I mean, when we're doing it, when we're on set and the little tiny babies come to visit and we're working with them, it's extraordinarily emotional. Everything's very quiet. It's always in a warm space. And I remember asking the midwife, saying, do you remain very calm, or do you get at all emotional when it happens? I mean, it is emotional seeing this little one being born. And she said, oh, no, you have to be very calm, and you don't get emotional. Well, I did the one scene where I was trying to not be emotional and all this is happening. And it is, it seems very well, you're really handling this little baby and everything. And then I looked around at the midwife and she was in floods of tears.
I tell you, that show, have tissue. To our audience, have your tissue ready.
I think, yes, the thing about childbirth is, of course, I think it touches us so much is because it's a new life, and a new life always means hope. And one always hopes that life will have some perfection. And yet part of us knows that it's never going to be perfect and it's always going to be difficult, but you're just wanting it to be good. And that desire is so present.
Jenny, let's talk about Sister Julienne. You've been on 123 episodes. We did the math. I think that's, yeah. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. So how would you describe Sister Julienne's character arc through those 14 seasons? Where did she start and where is she now?
And how did she get there?
Yeah, emotionally, spiritually.
And her leadership.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of weaving of different things coming in that affect, which is lovely. It's lovely to play, which is why it's still exciting 14 years on. And I can't believe I've been doing it this long. I think I always had a battle from the beginning of fully understanding faith. I was brought up Roman Catholic, so I understand religion, I understand the rituals, I understand all of that side of it. But for someone to have absolute faith is a very particular thing. So what I concentrated on is what she was about. And that was about serving, and whether it was serving God or serving people, but very particularly serving communities, serving women, and serving in childbirth and all that. So that's what she was, that as a character, that's what she was basically about. And there were people that I looked to. My mother she was very ill for a long period of time, and she was looked after by a nurse who was a nun. And I went to her to talk with her about her, what she did and how she dealt with things. And that was interesting. But also the character is a real character. And I happened to meet one of her nieces through circumstances, and she gave me the most wonderful notes about her as a character. So I had something very strong to go with. And this was somebody who had absolute faith, who had was no nonsense, who enjoyed people enormously. She gave me little things like she looked at people intensely. She would nod her head at them. She would listen to them. She was constantly amused by things and people and circumstances. Nothing seemed to get on top of her. Nothing seemed to be too much. Now, also in looking at it, because I remember as a teenager, the 60s, certainly the 70s, because that was a big part of the development of my career. But what I remember in the time I was born and growing up is quite different than the life that Sister Julienne would have had, because she lived through the First and Second World Wars. Now, coming to the 60s through the First and Second World War, you have a sense of immediately community, of the order, the way that works, there's a simplicity which begins to be taken apart. And during it, I know that Sister Julienne has one person kind of attack her on the fact that she wears a habit. She doesn't know what real life's about. She's not a woman on the streets. She has no idea. She just goes around there and everybody goes, yes, because, it's lovely. It's nice. It's very easy. You're a nun. And so she sort of secretly removes her habit, gets into ordinary clothes and goes out on the street and finds, yes, it's actually not quite so comfortable, but ends up going to the cinema and having ice cream and then going back. There's nothing she can do about it. It is the way it is. But it is an opening to the fact that not everybody has either those beliefs or indeed lives the way that she's doing it. She's in a closed place. So it does open her mind to things. And then there have been problems that she's come across. Abuse in a family, terrible abuse in a family. And that shakes one's faith and humanity. And so that was a difficult story to go through. I remember just how she navigates that and finds strength through that. There was another episode where she faces, she meets somebody that she might have married. And that was a wonderful one for me because it made it very, very clear that it wasn't a choice between a failed relationship and her faith, but the fact that she couldn't have that relationship because her faith was so strong and her desire to belong to this community and to be a nun was so strong and to serve in that way that she had to say no to the relationship. But she comes across it years later, and it is just a measuring up, but it gives you that sense of journey. And then just recently, there was an episode in 14 where she's beginning to feel tired, feel there is no way forward, feel the pressures, the lack of autonomy, and just that they no longer have a place in society and is lost with that. And because of an episode where she has to deal with a really difficult young woman who is being abused by a husband, and something she's seen over the years again and again, and something that she thinks is going to keep coming back again and again. And she thinks, how can I deal with it? But she does. And the outcome is, it gives her a great deal, and it gives her a great deal of strength. It was a lovely one to play. It's a lovely episode to play. And those are the sort of things, the changes and the way that one finds one's way through. The thalidomide was another one, which was really a difficult moment in time where suddenly science and faith kind of crossed one another. To begin with, one didn't know why these births were happening, coming across a thalidomide child, but then was left in a room as a live baby in a room where it wasn't going to thrive. And of course, her major concern was being able to save the soul of that child and just be with the child and just give it love and attention. Again, it was I think what has always come through is her sense that she just has to take care of situations, and that's it. That there is nothing more that one can do than take care of situations.
When you talk about the humanity of the series, I don't think I've ever watched an episode where I didn't either have a tear in my eye, a lump in my throat, and also laugh out loud. And the humanness of it comes through without it being nostalgic or sentimental. And what is strongest for me, as here in the States, we're hearing things like empathy is weakness and empathy is a sin. There are books that even have titles like that. Empathy seems to be at the heart of the Poplar community and that East End. So I'm curious, because we talk about historical dramas are not only a window to the past, but in some way they mirror our own time. And I'm wondering how you see Calling the Midwife mirroring what community is, or is it aspirational in terms of the community it presents?
You're asking a lot of things in there. I mean, yes, I think apart from anything, any of the stories that Heidi chooses to tell, she will see automatically where they fit in today. I mean, people being evicted from their houses, the poverty that we see today, what we've been through following COVID, and the food banks, the difficulties that people are facing. I mean, these are the same racism, homophobia, women's roles in society. You can look at that again and again. Medically, people refusing vaccinations when we can see historically the difference that those things made. So how important that is. Empathy is a really an interesting one. That's a whole other area. But, we are as animals made to feel empathetic because it's actually the only way we could survive. We don't survive singularly. We only survive as a group. We are not strong enough, any one of us, to do anything. We have to work as a group. So if one is sick, providing you're not so empathetic that you're actually just sort of throwing away everything it's a very positive, very important part of the way we are, is to be able to sustain those people who will then sustain us. It's a give and take. And they've shown with primates how that works. There's lots of stuff with, monkeys in cages being shown that if they help the other monkey, they get the reward. we get the reward. Yeah. I don't understand, I must say, I don't understand the argument of empathy not being a healthy thing, because it's very much a part of the way a community works. And it's a part of, obviously, Nonnatus House's way of being. It's interesting to watch how it can be lost. I suppose, one of the battles that one has is the more that authority takes over care, the less people take on the responsibility of care themselves. But that is a battle, because you want the authorities to take responsibility. It is really important they do. I wish there was more focus on education, because that would help with a great deal. But certainly in looking after women, looking after circumstances, looking after disabilities, looking after all those things, we have to do that, and the authorities need to do it. But we need to also take that on personally, and it's always keeping that balance going. For Sister Julienne, that's an odd thing, because having gone through the First and the Second World War, all you did was to take care of other people, because that was the only way you survived. You were being bombed. There was war going on. You were fighting for all these things. So that's absolutely naturally part of one's life. And to then go into the 70s, where people are making demands on the society and not necessarily giving anything back to it, becomes strange and difficult, like the Midgley, like Mrs. Midgley and her kind of view of the nurse. Yeah, it's just, I'm sort of rambling a bit there, but it is, yeah, it's, the history is important to us. In terms of the way we look at our society, the way we behave. It's sad that we don't learn very much more from it, but it's there to look at.
Call the Midwife does present that tension between the kind of public health and what I would call community health.
Yeah.
And how public health treats people almost like objects. This is a body part, this is a prescription, and what the nurses and the nuns at Nonnatus House do is think about the whole person in the context of their family, the context of their community. And I even remember the episode where Nurse Joyce, who wants to work in the hospital system, recognizes you have to treat the whole person. And that feels very contemporary, I think, in terms of looking at larger wellness in society. And it also makes me think about how Sister Julienne is navigating, as you're saying, all the changes. As more and more the authority, the public system is taking over and actually in some ways resisting the approach to healthcare. So as a lot of people now look at leaders and trying to help people go through change, I see Sister Julienne in that way. So if you were to describe her as a leader, what kind of attributes do you think she brings to her role in Nonnatus House?
I think because something about her character just really cares and has a great feeling for people. She wants, Nonnatus House to continue to be central to, as you were pointing out, to to family and to the world that they live in, and not be so answerable to the ways things have to be done through the systems, because that can be restricted. You can't actually take care in the same way. But they are in a position where they go into people's homes, and the nurse that goes down the street to look after the person that has, sores, and because there's a medical care as well going on, but that is going into people's homes. And there's less and less of that, which is harder, because it's in those circumstances that you get to understand, what people are actually dealing with, why they have issues. And I did, as someone who leads people, she relies on her team. She wants things to be consistent. She will try to make Nonnatus house as solid as she possibly can. And I think those are the things that are important to her, which is why in the series, we can't give too much away, but it's dealing with, at the end, that really being lost, the possibility of being in that community being lost entirely. What then becomes their job? How, and who's going to take that role? Where's that going to go in the future?
Another thing that strikes me about the series is, and this is kind of what you just said, is how you approach each person who is being treated in their home. Their home, sometimes, and you'll see people come into a home and look around, and they form an opinion based on what they see. But everyone comes into someone's home, or if they are unhoused, they need care, and they're treated with dignity and respect. And that's one thing I love about Call the Midwife, because most historical dramas, we see the aristocracy or people who are very wealthy. It's one of the few historical dramas where people of all, social, economic statuses are represented.
Yeah. I guess that's one of the things also. Dignity is a wonderful word. And it's certainly something Sister Julienne has. And also the fact that she just absolutely does not see the difference between people. It doesn't matter whether they've got money, they don't have money. It doesn't matter what they're like or what their difficulties are. It doesn't matter if they're rude or not. They're people. You just work with them, and that's it. Yeah. It's not like me.
Me neither.
Well, Jenny, this has been great, but we have one last question for you, and this is just for Jenny. What or whose story in history would you like to see adapted for drama?
Oh, my word. There are some wonderful women in science who have been ignored, and my mind goes blank right now. Everything from Fran, the woman who was involved with the whole DNA chain. Who's that?
Well, we'll have to look that up.
We'll have to look that up.
And I was only recognized, much later for the work that she did, where they went on. Yes, she, there's Crick and the two people at Cambridge, who discovered the genome and all of that. She was part of all of that. It's wonderful.
Rosalind Franklin, was that?
Rosalind, yes, absolutely. There you go. Yeah.
Thank goodness for the internet. What can I say?
Yeah. We should have an implant so that we can just go to it and automatically now, because there's a part of the brain that no longer works in that way. But yes, there's one person. Then there are people like Aphra Behn as a poet, who was a spy and a poet and a writer and traveled all over the world. And goodness me, I don't think has anyone done a film on her, story on her?
I don't recall, but
I'm afraid I'm of an age I can't play these characters, but my goodness, I'd love to see the stories done. Yeah, look up Aphra Behn. She's fascinating. Yeah, there's some good people out there.
Well, thank you, Jenny, for joining Taquina and me on Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters. We're looking forward to the 15th season of Call the Midwife.
Me too.
If not, the Christmas special, whichever comes first.
Thank you very much indeed. It's lovely to talk to you. And it's terrific what you're doing. I mean, it make people focus on the past and the present and where we're going. It's lovely.
Thank
and through
you.
drama. Drama is a terrific thing. I mean, it's lovely to be involved with that. I've been so happy to have that as part of my life.
You can catch the 14th season of Call the Midwife Sundays on PBS stations through May 11, 2025. Check local listings. The series is also available via the PBS Passport. Seasons 1 through 13 of Call the Midwife are available for streaming on Netflix with a subscription. The Call the Midwife series is created and written by Heidi Thomas, based on the memoirs by Jennifer Worth about her midwife experiences in London's East End in the 1950s. Jennifer Worth's memoirs and titles related to this and other podcasts are available from our affiliate bookstore. Go to our webpage at michonbostongroup.com/Boston Sisters or the podcast description for the link. Your book purchases support Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters podcast with a small commission and independent bookstores in your community.
Subscribe to Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters wherever you enjoy your favorite podcast. Leave a review. Michon and I hope you'll give the podcast 5 stars. Sign up for the e-newsletter to stay up to date on new podcasts, bonus episodes, and historical drama-related resources and activities. You can find the link on the webpage as well. Follow us on Instagram at Historical Drama Sisters and on Facebook at Historical Drama Boston Sisters. Like and share Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters on your social media.
This is Michon Boston.
And this is Tequina Boston.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters, a podcast about historical films and series dramas. Visit our webpage at michonbostongroup.com/Boston Sisters.
Tell us what historical dramas you're watching. Who knows? We may do a show about it. Sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the podcast, and share it with the people you know who binge on historical drama.
Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters is brought to you by the Michon Boston Group. The views and opinions expressed on Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters are those of the speakers and do not represent the positions or views of the Michon Boston Group, its clients, or affiliates. This is Michon Boston.
And this is Tequina Boston. Thank you for listening.